Good morning, creatures! Today while I work on my project, for a little bit of inspiration, I will be eating like my protagonist. So every meal and snack, with the exclusion of probably some coffee, I will be eating things that my protagonist might eat while they travel. I haven't really formally announced the names of my protagonists in my current work in progress yet, but that is definitely something that is coming soon. So while I am doing that today, I'm actually working on a re-outlining of my project. I feel like it really needs it. I've learned over my last couple of manuscripts that I really use fast drafting as a way to brainstorm. So of all the words that I've written for NaNoWriMo, even though I love the story and I love the characters, I think some of them need to stay and some of them need to go, and redoing my outline is sort of my way of getting reorganized and getting set up so that I can be a little bit more productive with my writing this coming year and with this particular project in general. And I thought having an Eating Like My Protagonist Day would be like a really fun, motivating way to spend an entire day writing. I feel like this here will probably take me 1 to 2 weeks, hopefully just 1 week, but with my schedule I never really know. And then after I get this new outline done and I solidify things that I'm keeping and things that I'm going, I'll be able to share a lot more about my project, so I'm really excited about that. As a little bit of a sneak peek, I haven't talked about my current work in progress in detail on this channel yet, mostly because I'm still figuring a lot of the things out, but I have decided during my fast drafting brainstorming stage that it is a two-person point of view, which is probably the biggest thing that changed. Whenever I started writing the book, I really thought it was going to be one person's point of view, but it is definitely going to be in two characters' point of view. I really love reading those books. I love those dynamics, and I think it'll add a lot to the story. So today with our Eating Like Our Protagonist vlog, we're going to be focusing on one of our main characters, and that will be Sem. Maybe after I do a little bit more announcing about my book and sort of what's going on, we will do the other main character. But this gentleman travels a lot throughout the book for a few reasons. So breakfast is going to be travel-friendly food. Lunch/afternoon snack is going to be tavern or pub food, because if you're just stopping in somewhere to eat and sleep, that's sort of what you're going to get. And then dinner is going to be traditional food from where he grew up, which is a place we do get to see in the book. So I thought it would be really fun to include this. And even though I am writing high fantasy, some of the food today is going to have Japanese influence. And there are a few other things in my books that I feel like have really strong Japanese influence. I really enjoyed the culture when I lived there. It was probably one of the most colorful and diverse things I've ever experienced, because each area and each region really does things differently. So I've adopted some things that I picked up whenever I traveled, and I've sewn them into my story a lot. But it is about 11 o'clock now. My breakfast is really going to be a brunch, and I'm probably not going to make my whole lunch that I had planned, mostly because I don't want to waste it. So I'll probably make half of it as a snack in the early afternoon, and I'm going to get started on breakfast and outlining. So I forgot to say before I put my buns in the steamer, but there are a couple ways that I am cheating. Now the first is I'm using a modern steamer because I have one, also because I don't have one of those traditional steaming baskets. They're kind of expensive and I wasn't going to buy one just for this project. So I am using technology that wouldn't be available in my world, and I'm also cutting a few corners when it comes to things like noodles. I could make the noodles. I have made noodles before. They're really fun, but it's really time consuming and I want to be able to work on my project today. I'm also using frozen gyoza. I love making gyoza. It's probably one of the most fun dumplings to make. I think it's really satisfying whenever you get them in the right shape, but it is another project that takes a few hours and I really want to work on my book, so I bought a bag of frozen gyoza. Those two things are going to be for dinner, but throughout the day I'm just going to be using my gas oven and my electric steamer, and the shabu shabu we're making for dinner is actually going to be in that same pot that I'm steaming the buns. It's like a multi-function pot. So in a perfect world, and maybe in the future when I have more time, I'll do this again and I'll make the noodles fresh and I'll make the dumplings fresh fresh. I did make the butaman that are in the steamer now. It's just like a pork and onion and leek filling that has some seasonings and a couple sauces like soy sauce and a little bit of vinegar. And then I made the dough and everything yesterday. It was a whole ordeal and it was a whole lot of fun, and it's definitely one of the more exciting things that I'm going to be eating today. I definitely ate these a lot in Japan, but they're actually like Chinese, if that makes sense. So they are frequently available in Japan in different types of markets, but they are something that even Japan markets as being Chinese. So I think it is nice and diverse. Different areas have different types of them. It's one of those things where like every town has like a good pork bun place. I think it's something we should definitely normalize in the US because they're absolutely amazing. As for outlining, I'm actually doing an entire vlog on just the re-outlining process if that's something you're interested in. I think we're only going to be doing a portion of it today, but the plan is I'm taking the 15 beats out of the Save the Cat Writes a Novel book, and I am like deciding definitely what I want each beat to be, and then I'm sort of going back and tweaking for tension and suspense, and then the areas in between the beats I am actually planning as I go. So I'm gonna decide all 15 beats up front so I know where my story is going. It's easier to draw a line from point A to point B if you know where point B is, if that makes sense. So I'll do the entire like skeleton of the outline, and then at the beginning of the setup I'll go through and I'll say, okay, based on what I have in my manuscript and where I want it to go, what parts can I reuse and what parts do I have to rewrite? And then I think I'm going to break it down into scene cards. I've never really done scene cards for a book before, so I think it would be fun to experiment with how deep I can go with this planning. So I'm going to eat and I'm going to get through, I want to say a couple points. I'm probably just going to sit down for an hour or two and then I'll check back in.
I see the stars and the planets soon follow. Expect to have the universe by tomorrow. Just sit back and relax, don't worry. The work you
So the buns were like a little bit of a bust. They were really good, but I feel like it was definitely baker's error. I made them last night and I froze them, and I think that was the problem. I think they are really like a make and bake immediately kind of thing. But the steamers, how you normally cook them, they have like a noodle texture on the outside and they're like fluffy on the inside. And I feel like I did pretty good with the dough, but because they were frozen, they thawed out slowly in the steamer and then they cooked. So because they thawed out slowly, they got really droopy, and like they have yeast in them, so they got droopy and they grew a little bit as they were steaming. So whenever I noticed that was happening, I threw some in the oven and they got like a nice shape and they grew, but they had a hard texture on the outside. But I still think that they were pretty good. I think I would just maybe try a different recipe if I made them again. But while I was eating, I had a little bit of an epiphany about my opening scene. I feel like I'm not the best at opening scenes. I love the beginning of projects. I think there's so much potential there, but I almost always change the opening scene, especially for long works like books. Whatever I write as the first opening scene always gets rewritten. So I had a really good thought of how to turn my opening scene from something that was like a day in the life snapshot, which was honestly, I thought it was a little bit boring, but I knew that. I knew I wanted to change it. So I found something that was like a hook, but also tied in a little bit of backstory and added a little bit of mystery. And I'm hoping that works out pretty well. I also got my like theme stated, my setup, and my catalyst loosely written down. And I do say loosely because I have a feeling this process is just going to be me planning out a few steps, having a few ideas, planning out a few more steps, and then going back and changing one or two things. I also realized that I'm going to have a little bit of a problem with sections that are bigger chunks. So if you're familiar with the 15-beat system, it's some of the beats are one scene, some are a collection of scenes. So my idea was to plan like one scene for each of these points, or really one turning point in the story, but like the setup is the first 10% of the book. It's going to be really hard to sum that up in like one scene or one happening, so I'm probably going to be doing a short paragraph for something like that. Again, like the fun and games is from 20% to 50% of the book. It's that huge chunk. So I can't really just do one idea or one scene. I really have to do a small bullet point list or a paragraph. I have a paragraph for the setup. But all in all, I think today's going pretty productive. I'm probably going to work for a few more minutes. I think I'm going to move out to the living room and just get comfortable and get under some blankets. It's really snowy here. And then in a little bit, probably shortly, I'm going to be making caramel sauce. And the caramel sauce is for my dessert thing for my protagonist, something I've seen that I've never heard of before. They're called apple nachos, and I think it really sums up a perfect sort of edible sweet in the world that I'm writing, so I definitely wanted to use it. I'm making the caramel sauce earlier in the day though, so I can put it on coffee.
No need to hurry.
There's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to eat all of what I planned for lunch. Probably just because of how late I got started and how late I really had breakfast. It was more of a brunch, so I was planning on doing Parmesan crusted bread with seasoned shredded chicken and roasted vegetables, but I'm thinking, like, I'm getting a little bit peckish, but I'm not super hungry, and dinner's going to be in like 4 or so hours, so I'm thinking I might make a like small serving of roasted vegetables, or I might even make like a whole pan and just have them for leftovers. So while the vegetables are roasting, I actually need a break from brainstorming, so I'm gonna do a little bit of YouTube stuff, and then I actually think that I'm going to experiment with like aesthetic boards. I really like seeing them. I think it's really cool. I really would like to share some for my own project over on my Instagram, so I think I'm going to look around on what kind of imagery that I would want to include for like people or locations or even my project overall. But I just needed a general break from brainstorming. I feel like some of the ideas that I was coming up with weren't the highest quality, but nothing a little more coffee and some vegetables won't fix, you know, some brain food and a break, you know, a break can go a long way.
Getting harder to stay in control, but perfection is my only goal.
So the roasted vegetables turned out amazing. I'm definitely going to use that recipe again. I have this idea in my head that, you know, especially in like fantasy worlds, that fruits and vegetables would be cheaper than meats just because of you can produce them in mass quantity, and whenever you harvest them, you still have the plant that grows more, whereas, you know, meat, you slaughter it and then the animal's gone, stuff like that. But it's also, I think, an ease of cooking and a convenience, you know? Like, whenever you harvest vegetables, you really just pick them off, wash them, cut them up, but like to butcher meat is a lot bigger of an ordeal. So I really wanted to have some veggie-based meal. So the majority of what lunch was supposed to be, or the most filling part really of lunch, was this roasted vegetables. And all I really had to do was wash and cut them and then season them with a little bit of oil and put them in the oven. So I thought that was a great representation of something cheap and convenient that would be accessible in this world. As far as outlining goes, I really need a break. I need a brainstorming break. I just need to step away from it and do something else. So for now, I think I'm going to be doing some homework and some YouTube stuff just so I don't have as much to worry about and fuss over. I'm also thinking about sitting down and making an aesthetic board for my project. It would just be something fun to share with you guys over on Instagram. So if you're not following my Instagram, the link is always in the description below. But yeah, I'm going to take a little break and I'm going to get some other things done until about dinner time. And then around dinner, I am going to go back to my manuscript and I'm going to see, like, do I want to brainstorm more? Do I maybe want to write a little bit? Is there anything else productive I can do for the book? Now, dinner is going to be shabu shabu, which is a great sit-down meal. It's really like a community, like talking to people, whether it's your family or business partners or just festival celebrating, if that makes sense. But I thought it was a great representation of Sem and where he came from. His backstory and the culture where he's from is very different than who he is whenever we meet him in our book. It does show through a little bit, so I thought this would be a great way to sort of celebrate in my eating like Sem for a day vlog. But yeah, shabu shabu is definitely like a fancier kind of meal, so it's not for smaller occasions, if that makes sense. So I don't have a dining room, so this is my dining room table whenever I do need one, and for shabu shabu I have the same steaming basket that I steamed the buns in earlier. I'll be making broth in the bottom of this, and it sits on like a nice little hot plate. And then I have a tray of veggies, and I usually do cabbage and carrots and onions and daikon. The cabbage is normally green, but this one was just really white, so it's a little bit whitewashed. But I was looking forward to the good like balance of colors between the carrots and the cabbage. And the meat, you have really, really thinly sliced meat. So I'm going to be making a miso-based soy sauce broth in this. And then the whole idea of shabu shabu is you sit around the table and you like cook it as you eat. That's why the meat is thinly cut and the vegetables are also thinly cut. So you just put what you're about to eat in the broth and you let it cook while you sit and you talk and you have community, and then you eat as you go.
Have to fight it 'cause I won't go back. I'd rather see the whole world go back to black. But then I'm blinded by this light from nowhere. This blue planet with life and an atmosphere. I look closer and I can't believe what I'm seeing down there.
Dinner was an absolute success. I think that is a great representation of what they would eat in his hometown and area. I do plan on making a map at some point for my novel, so it would be really awesome to do this for different areas and also do this for different characters and stuff like that. I have one thing left to make, and it's 10 o'clock now and I'm absolutely stuffed. So whether I make it tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll put a clip at the end of this video, and it's like a dessert item. I plan on slicing apple wedges up very thinly and then drizzling them with homemade caramel drizzle that I made. I think that's a nice, easily accessible recipe where you're taking something that's naturally sweet and you're enhancing it. So that's definitely what I wanted to use as my like dessert item, but I couldn't shove another bite in my face right now. As far as planning, I didn't get a whole lot more planning done other than the first act. I got the first act sort of penciled out very nicely. I'm convinced I scratched my cornea, so I can't see much of anything right now. I had to take my contacts out a couple of hours ago because my eyes were so dry and so burning. So that's probably the end of my productivity for today. I do have some glasses that I can put on, but I'm going to try not to do any reading or anything super difficult, and I'm just going to relax for the rest of the night. I hope that you guys enjoyed this vlog, and I hope that you guys try out something similar. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe so you'll get notifications when I post videos twice a week.
It's me.